This week, Jonny Robot emerges bleary-eyed from the world of The Witcher 3. I get behind the wheel and ignore all the road rules in the latest Carmageddon, and we chat to Eve Beauregard and a bunch of merry cosplayers from this year's Oz Comic Con. This is Player Attack. Hi, I'm Jessica Citizen, and this week we're starting things off with some good news from Blizzard. Normally we'd keep the movie stuff to the end, but this week we have been given an early look at how Orc War Chief Orgrim will appear in the upcoming Warcraft movie, and it is totally worth showing off. Normally we'd say there's a man under there, but given the nature of CG, actor Robert Kaczynski isn't actually under there, but it is his acting and expressions we will see when the film finally reaches cinemas. Another interesting bit of Warcraft film trivia, the original draft of Gary Whitta's script included a reference to the one and only Leroy Jenkins, who, as you might expect, ran into battle too early and suffered the consequences.
Ready, guys? Let's do this! Leroy Jenkins! Oh my god, he just ran in.
It's been 10 years since Leroy first rushed into our hearts, and while we're disappointed he's been left on the cutting room floor, it's lovely to know he was nearly brought to the big screen. More Blizzard news, and the developer's been copping a bit of flack this week over a relatively minor change to Tychus Findlay as he appears in Heroes of the Storm. Tychus, the hulking space marine, is rarely seen in the StarCraft universe without his glowing cigar, but that's set to change when he shows up in the MOBA. It turns out that because Blizzard is intent on keeping Heroes of the Storm within the guidelines laid out for an international teen audience, and assorted classification groups around the world have different views on tobacco use, the cigar's been butted out. Blizzard acknowledges that yes, it could have just made a non-smoking version and let people choose whether or not Tychus had adopted the filthy habit, but also that this option would involve a serious increase to the character's development time. Instead, Tychus has been forced to quit cold turkey. Now it's time to dip into the legal files for a stack of updates. Duke Nukem officially belongs to Gearbox Software, despite what 3D Realms and Interceptor might have claimed last year. The drawn-out legal case has finally been resolved, and while we don't know the details of the settlement, it looks like 3DR has been left empty-handed, unless it wants to buy back the rights to the franchise. This probably bothers the developer less than it once did. 3D Realms and Interceptor are now working together on a totally new game, the 90s-tastic isometric shooter Bombshell, which is in no way a gender-swapped version of Duke Nukem Mass Destruction. A member of Lizard Squad has also been in court after terrorising League of Legends players across the US and Canada. The 17-year-old, who cannot be named, has pleaded guilty to 23 charges of extortion, public mischief and criminal harassment. In the real world, that means he stalked, doxed and swatted his victims, most of whom were young female gamers who rejected his romantic advances. 2 men have been sentenced to a year in prison, charged with selling counterfeit Razer products online in China. The hardware manufacturer worked closely with Shanghai officials to bust a counterfeiting ring, which saw thousands of imitation products seized, and both men fined more than $50,000 each. And Rockstar Games is no stranger to lawsuits, but this one was still a surprise. The Grand Theft Auto developer has taken the BBC to court over the upcoming docudrama based on the game's history. Details aren't really clear about quite what's going on here, but it seems that the Game Changer documentary, based on an unauthorised tell-all book, presents an uncomfortable risk for Rockstar, who is going out of its way to make sure that its trademarks and intellectual property are not misused in the film. In other news, another week, another reboot. This time EA has confirmed that Ghost Games is working on a full reboot of Need for Speed, promising deep customization, authentic urban car culture, a nocturnal open world, and an immersive narrative. It's set to launch in the second half of the year, and we will get a full reveal at E3 during the EA press conference. Something else we'll hopefully see more of at E3 is Bloodborne, with Sony's worldwide studio president Shuhei Yoshida announcing that an expansion is coming, even though he won't discuss any further details at this time. Hellraid, on the other hand, will officially not be at E3, despite a decent showing from Techland in 2014. The studio has put the dark first-person fantasy on hold, which is a polite way of saying they've probably axed it in favour of paying more attention to the rapidly growing Dying Light franchise. Jonny has more about The Witcher 3 later on in the show, and while most people seem to be in love with it, there are some who just aren't happy. Turns out the finished product from CD Projekt Red doesn't quite live up to the expectations set by the game's reveal at E3 2013. But it's okay. Enterprising modders are working on a fix that actually tones down the colours used, upping the browns and messing around a bit with post-processing. It's a work in progress, but there are currently 2 mods at least that make The Witcher 3 look better, if you're into that sort of thing. And finally this week, the teaser trailer to beat all teaser trailers. We've been waiting a long time for a look at the next Doom, and Bethesda has finally released one ahead of the publisher's big E3 showcase. But if you blink, you'll miss it. You can expect more next month. For more information on any of these stories, or to keep up to date with the latest gaming news, head to playerattack.com. But for now, stick around, we've got plenty more still to come.
After getting some hands-on time with The Witcher 3 earlier this year, I kinda knew what I was getting myself in for once this sucker finished installing on my rig. The key word there being kinda. After more hours than I'd care to tally, I managed to somehow pry myself away from the screen and stand in front of you today. Fair warning, starting The Witcher 3 is not something you should do if you plan to maintain healthy social life or get your RDI of vitamin sunshine. It falls squarely into the territory of there's so much stuff to do, and I'll just play it for another hour. He said 3 days ago. This tends to be par for the course with most RPGs, even more so for those that tote the magical prefix open world, and boy does The Witcher fall into the latter. The world CD Projekt Red has created is unparalleled by anything I've played before, not only in mere size, but also scope. Navigating the expanses of the Northern Kingdom requires you to essentially become a somewhat less genocidal Columbus, marking out and exploring territory by foot, horseback, and even boat. Unlike other open-world fantasy RPGs, the Witcher world feels more organic and densely inhabited. There's always something going on. You just have to find it, and make you and your sword part of it. Whether whatever you find wants you to or not, that's a different story. On that note, as the bards of the time will tell you, witching ain't easy. However, it's never been more accessible. An overhauled combat system makes hunting man and beast far more fluid and responsive. Utilizing the now industry standard Arkham style of combat, Geralt can swing, dodge, and riposte his way through most encounters. Most being the operative word here. Witching means more than blindly swinging away with a can-do attitude. Bigger beasts will have you stalking them, learning which of your spells will give you an advantage, and prepping for the fight with buffs and oils. It requires precision, calculation, and if all else fails, spewing fire out of your hand till the damn thing stops moving. This culminates in a real feeling of victory, a victory you earn through your skill and prowess as a Witcher, which makes that griffin head you're now carting around all the sweeter.
What happened?
Monsters from the swamp. Folks said the road was fraught with peril, but I wouldn't listen. Got my comeuppance now.
Less moaning, more details. What happened, and how can I help? And remember, I don't work for free. Witcher's code and all.
Well, was on my way to the Black Ones to trade. Suddenly my horse got spooked, ran clear off the road. We hit a bump, I went flying and the horse and cart rolled on. Then I heard bubbling, neighing, slurping. Something came out from the muck, devoured Asher, hooves and all.
I feel it'd be amiss of me though not to mention the visuals on this one, because it seems to be a point of contention for a lot of folk. Simply put, The Witcher 3 looks fucking stunning. The world is lush and varied, the character models are so insanely detailed, and every nook and cranny looks like it had somebody put way more work into it than was ever warranted. As for frame rate, I've heard that the PS4 has had some issues. But on my rig, I experienced a fairly consistent 45 frames per second at 1080p, and that was with a 660 i7 combo. But you know what? Fuck all that. Because boiling The Witcher 3 down to specs is doing a massive disservice. The most impressive part of The Witcher 3, the thing that will see you investing 100+ hours into it, is far more deceptively simple. It's the narrative. So I'm gonna have to make a distinction here. When I say narrative, in this case, I don't mean plot. But don't get me wrong, the plot's fairly strong, if not a little padded, but it's a larger world narrative that's far more interesting. You see, The Witcher 3 does that crazy thing where it utilizes everything it has to tell a story, instead of just dialogue. You know, the kind you inevitably start skipping to trigger the next fetch quest. The story it weaves is a depressing look at the effects of war, not on grand figures, but on a more intimate level. You see families torn apart, homes in ruins, and people just losing everything. This feeling of desperation and fear permeates every aspect of the Northern Kingdoms, from the side quests you undertake to just walking through a village. Monsters come in many forms in The Witcher 3, and it quickly becomes apparent that the majority of them don't dwell in the wilderness. It's enough to recommend this game solely for its mature and fully realized world, where you stumble across many stories and adventures that will stick with you well after you've received your allotted XP. Combine this with the overhauled and more accessible gameplay mechanics, and you've easily got yourself an instant modern classic. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go stand in the sun for a while, and not dwell on the futility of my life decisions.
For the Witcher, brave and bold, paid in coin of gold. He'll chop and slice, you cut and dice, you eat, you uphold. Eat you whole.
Even if you've never played it, you know about Carmageddon. It was one of the greatest boogeymen of video game history, a racing game where you were rewarded points for not just running into your fellow racers and random obstacles, but also innocent pedestrians who just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Seriously, you were able to complete races either in the traditional method, by completing a certain number of laps faster than everybody else, or you could take out all of the other cars on the track, or you could run over every single pedestrian on the level. Predictably, while certain gamers loved it, this gaming concept wasn't very well received by critics, politicians, or the general public back in 1997 when the original game was launched. The UK refused to certify the game until all blood and gore was removed, meaning that Britain joined Germany in receiving a modified version where all of the human characters were replaced by robots with black oil blood, or zombies with green. After nearly a year of fighting, the British Board of Film Classification approved the release of the original game, red blood and all. That said, Australia, with its notoriously strict rules about these things, let the game through unscathed with an MA15+ rating, with the censors noting simply a high level of animated violence. The same could easily be said for Carmageddon Reincarnation, which is out right now. It's technically a sequel rather than a remake, but if you've never climbed behind the wheel of this death race, it's as good a place to start as any. A little more history. Back in 2011, original Carmageddon developers Stainless Games bought the rights to their own game, as Square Enix wasn't planning on doing anything with the franchise. Since then, it's been working on bringing the game back to life, a literal reincarnation, and it couldn't have done it without the support of 15,000 fans. Stainless set up a Carmageddon Kickstarter in 2012 to raise the necessary funds, asking for $400,000 to bring Max Damage back from the dead. At the end of the campaign, the studio had more than $625,000 in the bank and was good to go, making the game for PC, Mac, and Linux. However, After the team had worked on the game for the better part of the next year, it became obvious that this budget wasn't quite enough to make the game Stainless really wanted to make. An iOS re-release of the original Carmageddon added a little extra cash to the coffers, but a major cash injection came from former EA bigwig Les Edgar, who personally threw $3.5 million into the investment in March 2013, with the money earmarked for next-gen console builds. Over the next 2 years, the team has worked tirelessly on the game, entering early access in March 2014, hitting public beta in February this year, and after one more delay, finally seeing a full, polished release this month on Steam. So, what's it like? Well, it's Carmageddon. It's exactly what you'd expect. The developers set out to make a game as close as possible to the original, and they've succeeded. Of course, the 20-year gap does mean that there are a whole lot of tweaks to the graphics and the sound, but in terms of gameplay, if you played any of the early ones, you'll be right at home. You don't even have to mute the in-game music. Carmageddon Reincarnation has Fear Factory front and centre in the soundtrack, just like the first time round, even though it is sandwiched between some more recent dubstep additions. Some things have changed. The original Carmageddon was designed to push the limits of the late 90s hardware it was expected to run on. Reincarnation, on the other hand, is a whole lot more accessible, part of the team's commitment to opening the game up to new audiences. That said, there is the same black humour, terrible jokes, and ridiculous over-the-top violence that you loved from the original game. There's even multiplayer if you don't want to go it alone, a 50-event career mode if you do, and free play if you don't need no stinking rules. 24 custom cars, nearly 100 power-ups, a whole stack of collectibles, upgrade tokens and achievements, and in case you're not completely fond of what Stainless has done, there's even Carmageddon mode, so you can change whatever you like. Carmageddon Reincarnation has been described as a Carmageddon fit for the 21st century, so if you've been hanging out for an opportunity to turn pedestrians into points, you can grab it now via Steam.
Race completed!
I'm here at Oz Comic Con and we've been walking around talking to cosplayers and I've come across a professional one, Miss Eve Beauregard. Eve, how long have you been doing this?
I've been cosplaying for 8 years, but professionally for about 2 years.
What have we got going on here today?
This is a character from WB's Arrow, Slade Wilson prior to Slade basically becoming Deathstroke. Oh, that's a spoiler.
I am Jack of Blades from the original Fable.
It's just not a convention without the chief, and my, this is a mean-looking chief.
I'm wearing roller derby Catwoman today. My skates are behind my table, sorry.
And does Dredd ever remove his helmet?
No, never.
Right answer, right answer.
But we have a full group of the roller derby Gotham City Sirens. It's a lot of fun. It's just like a new fun take on some of our favourite characters.
So walking around, we've seen heroes, and unfortunately we've come across villains. Why didn't you destroy the mask?
The mask is all powerful, and it gives me great strength.
How much of your life is vampired away by this?
I'm not sure if I want to admit.
How long, dude? How long?
It's about 6-7 weeks, I think. Yeah, it was on and off for a bit because I had a couple of other projects to work on as well. But yeah, roughly 6 or 7 weeks.
You know, costumes can take as little as maybe 25 to 50 hours, and sometimes as much as, 100 plus. So just depends on the costume and what's involved.
That's more time than I can put into most games, so I'm impressed.
Cosplay is one of those things that it's so much fun and it requires so many new skills and you make so many new friends that it quickly takes over your life.
Quite a lot of hours cutting metal and then drilling and bolting everything together. Hardest thing is finding old-fashioned screws because Phillips head screws just don't work in a Victorian outfit.
I made it a long time ago and finally got to wear it.
It looks so velvety.
It is very velvety. It's real leather straps as well.
It's made of EVA foam. You know, the interlocking floor mats that you can buy from, you know, Bunnings and stuff.
That's pretty damn good, dude.
This is more of an assembled costume because it's a replica from television. So you kind of basically go out and you figure out what they did for the costume, try to source all the pieces, and then put it together. There's a lot of distressing that's gone into it to take something new and make it look old. But aside from that, it's mostly all found items.
Can this actually take a plasma blast, or are we working with something else? Maybe foam?
I haven't tried yet. It'd be interesting. I reckon someone could try, you know, test it out today on me.
So we've been walking around the con and we're coming across some pretty cool cosplayers. I've found myself a bunch of judges. So guys, what inspired you to be the judges today?
Well, for me, I went and saw the movie with my dad, and I thought, wow, that is like one of the coolest costumes I've ever seen.
It's really awesome that Oz Comic Con have put so much effort into creating Cosplay Central. For an Australian convention to really show that they value the community and that they want to support us and give us a fun place to hang out. I mean, the reception to that has been amazing.
And that's about it for this edition of Player Attack. Thanks for watching. Next week we head to the movies to check out Mad Max Fury Road, while Mel uncovers her crazy cat lady side with a collection of feline fun. In the meantime, you can catch us on playerattack.com. We're on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, and if you've got something you want to say, send us an email, mailbox@playerattack.com, or just hop on our forums. Till next week, I'm Jessica Citizen, and this is Player Attack.